Part 1. The game is afoot. Unlocking the mind of a genius. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this wide, ever-spinning, often bewildering world. Take a moment with me, won't you? Let's just breathe. Close your eyes for a second, if you can, and allow your imagination to transport you. Can you feel it? That crisp, damp, earthy scent of a thick, rolling fog, having made its silent, creeping pilgrimage inland from the mighty, murky Thames. It mingles now, ever so subtly, with the familiar, comforting aroma of coal smoke, drifting lazily from countless chimneys, painting the very air with the essence of old London. And yes, there's something else. Something utterly, unmistakably Victorian, perhaps the faint, sharp tang of gin wafting from a nearby gas-lit pub, or the ghost of freshly baked muffins from a baker's early morning oven, or even the lingering scent of damp wool, pipe tobacco, and ancient leather-bound books. It's a city breathing, living, hiding its secrets. You might even catch, carried on the chill, damp air, the distant, rhythmic clip-clop of a hansom cab, its lone passenger likely a shadowy figure, cloaked in mystery, disappearing as quickly as it appeared into the swirling, sepia-toned mist. Its horse's breath plumes like miniature dragon smoke against the dawn, its small bell jingling faintly, fading into the urban hush. And there, amidst this perfectly crafted tableau of London at the turn of the century, a world poised precariously between gaslight and electricity, between horse-drawn carriages and nascent motor cars, between ancient traditions and revolutionary science, a city throbbing with untold stories and hidden secrets, a tapestry of human experience waiting to be unpicked, a single match flares. Its brief, brilliant, defiant light cuts through the omnipresent gloom, illuminating for a fleeting, captivating instant a keen, almost hawk-like profile, a formidable brow etched with concentration, and eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of ages and the sharpest, most piercing of intellects. A pipe, its bowl warm and well-loved, a constant companion, is carefully, almost ritualistically lit, its cherry glow a small, defiant beacon in the vast, enveloping darkness. This, my friends, this immersive sensory tapestry, this perfect blend of sound, scent, and shadow, is the iconic, unforgettable opening to the world of Sherlock Holmes. And for me, personally, it's not merely a setting, a static backdrop, or a clever narrative device, it's a living, breathing experience, a timeless portal I've absolutely adored losing myself in ever since I first cracked open a worn, slightly dog-eared paperback as a wide-eyed kid, utterly captivated by the promise of unraveled mysteries, by the sheer audacity of intellect at play. It's a place where logic doesn't just exist, it reigns supreme, a sovereign, almost divine power. It's a world where the human mind, at its most extraordinarily sharp, its most exquisitely honed, can, with breathtaking precision, cut through the densest of deceptions, pierce the most intricate webs of lies, and bring an almost blinding clarity to the most profound and unsettling confusion. It's a place where the seemingly impossible, under the relentless, penetrating gaze of a true genius, doesn't remain impossible, but simply transforms into the startlingly, yet undeniably, probable. Our man, the inimitable, often inscrutable, always fascinating Sherlock Holmes, famously declared, with an almost desperate, visceral plea for raw substance, data. 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 I can't make bricks without clay. And that, my dear listeners, that single, potent declaration, right there, encapsulates the very essence, the foundational cornerstone of his unparalleled, almost mythical genius. He doesn't just look at a scene, he sees it, truly sees it, observing every microscopic detail with an intensity that borders on the superhuman. He doesn't merely listen to a witness's account, he hears the unspoken nuances, the subtle inflections, the tiny tells that betray more than words ever could, discerning truth from fabrication in the tremor of a VO. Part 2, Welcome to 221B, A Doctor's Perspective. Hello, old friends. Or perhaps, new friends, embarking on a very old journey with me. You know, it's funny how time plays tricks on you. Decades pass, the gas lamps give way to electric glow, hansom cabs are replaced by contraptions that whiz by at frankly alarming speeds, and yet, some memories remain as vivid as the day they were forged. Some places, even now, feel as real as the room I'm sitting in. For me, that place is, and always will be, 221B Baker Street. My name is John Watson. Dr. John Watson. And yes, you might know me as the Shadow, the Chronicler, the somewhat bewildered but perpetually loyal companion to a mind unlike any other. You might know me from the pages, perhaps even from the flickering screens. But today, I invite you to know me a little differently. I'm not just the recorder of facts, I'm the one who lived through them. I breathed the air of those rooms, felt the chill of London's fog seep through the windows, and witnessed, firsthand, the raw human drama that unfolded, case after case. I'm no longer the young man recently returned from Afghanistan, scarred by war, seeking solace and purpose in the labyrinthine streets of Victorian London. No, time has marched on, and I with it. I've seen the world change, seen medicine evolve in ways I could scarcely have dreamed of back then. And with that evolution, with the wisdom, and perhaps a few more gray hairs, that comes from living a full life, my perspective on those incredible years at 221B has deepened, broadened, and become, well, more human. You see, for all the talk of logic, deduction, and the cold, crystalline brilliance of Sherlock Holmes, there was always something far more profound at play. Something that often gets lost in the clinical retelling of a case. There was the feeling of it all. The anxiety of a client, the despair of a victim, the desperate cunning of a culprit, the quiet satisfaction of a puzzle solved, and sometimes, the lingering sorrow of justice not quite served. As a doctor, trained to observe the subtle tells of the human body, to listen not just to what is said but to what is unsaid, to recognize suffering and resilience, I was uniquely positioned to see beyond the intellectual gymnastics. I saw the people. And it's those people, those emotions, those often missed undercurrents, that I want to share with you now. So, welcome. Welcome to 221B. Take a moment, if you will, to imagine it with me. It's not a grand, imposing space, though it certainly held its share of grandeur. It was, first and foremost, a home. Our home. A wonderfully chaotic, endlessly fascinating, and utterly unique haven in the heart of London. Picture it, a cozy, yet often surprisingly cluttered, sitting room on the first floor. The gaslight, when lit, casting a warm, slightly flickering glow across the worn Persian carpet. The air, perpetually thick with the scent of strong tobacco from Holmes's infamous black shag, mingled with the faint, intriguing tang of various chemical reagents. It was a symphony of smells, the musty scent of old books spilling from every available surface, the crisp aroma of freshly printed newspapers piled high, the metallic tang of something Holmes had been experimenting with on his chemical bench in the corner. Ah, that chemical bench. A constant source of both fascination and occasional alarm. Test tubes bubbling, crucibles simmering, retorts spitting. Sometimes, a pungent, almost acrid smell would permeate the entire flat, prompting Mrs. Hudson, our long-suffering landlady, to clatter upstairs with a disapproving cough. But for Holmes, it was his playground, his laboratory, an extension of his own formidable mind. Amidst the scattered scientific instruments, microscopes, tweezers, vials of powders both innocuous and frankly, rather suspicious, you'd find an odd assortment of artifacts related to ongoing cases, a battered hat, a muddy boot, a curious handwritten note, a silk scarf, each awaiting its turn under the penetrating gaze of the master. The mantelpiece, a testament to Holmes's peculiar habits, often held the cur. Chapter 1: The Woman Who Beat the Master. Welcome, my fellow adventurers, to a journey through the timeless world of Sherlock Holmes. For years, I've delved into the dusty tomes, walked the fog-laden streets of Victorian London, and found myself utterly captivated by the intricate mind of Baker Street's most famous resident. And today, we begin at the very beginning of the collection, with the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. But let me tell you, if you think you know Holmes, if you think you've seen all his tricks, then you are in for a delightful surprise with our very first tale. Because this isn't just an adventure, it's a profound defeat, a lesson in humility, and the introduction of a character so formidable, she carved her own legend into the annals of detective fiction. This, my friends, is Chapter 1, The Woman Who Beat the Master. And the story we're about to unravel is none other than a scandal in Bohemia. Now, picture this. It's a typical evening at 221B Baker Street. The year is 1888. Dr. Watson, ever the faithful chronicler, is settled in, likely pondering a recent medical case or perhaps the latest advancements in forensic science. Holmes, as usual, is either deeply immersed in a chemical experiment of dubious odor or lost in thought, his violence sometimes at his chin, sometimes merely clutched, waiting for inspiration or a case to ignite his formidable intellect. The air, I imagine, would have been thick with the scent of tobacco, old books, and the peculiar energy of a genius at work. Suddenly, the mundane gives way to the utterly theatrical. A hansom cab pulls up with a flourish, and from it emerges a figure who seems to have stepped right out of a grand opera. This man, shrouded in a thick overcoat, his face obscured by a dramatic black mask, arrives at Holmes's door with an air of profound secrecy and barely contained urgency. He is, to put it mildly, a walking enigma. Watson, bless his pragmatic heart, must have been bewildered. Who was this mysterious nocturnal visitor, treating Holmes's humble lodgings like a clandestine meeting point in a spy novel? Holmes, of course, isn't easily rattled. He observes, he deduces. He sees the expensive, tailored clothing beneath the theatrical disguise, the subtle signs of wealth and breeding. He lets the man make his grand entrance, his whispered pleas for discretion. And then, with a calm that must have driven the masked man to distraction, Holmes peels back the layers of pretense. This isn't just any important person, this is a king. The King of Bohemia himself, Wilhelm Gottsreich Sigismund von Ormstein, Grand Duke of Kassel-Felstein and hereditary King of Bohemia. A monarch, mind you, reduced to clandestine visits and desperate pleas to a consulting detective in London. The sheer audacity, the delicious irony of it, always makes me smile. And what, you ask, could possibly bring a king, a man of such immense power and privilege, to this state of near panic? Not treason, not war, not even a lost crown jewel. No, it's something far more personal, far more potent, a photograph. A single, seemingly innocuous photograph. But this isn't just any snapshot, it's an image of the king with a woman from his past, a passionate entanglement he'd had with a certain opera singer named Irene Adler. Now, why is this photograph such a threat? Because the king, in a classic tale of royal necessity, is about to marry a Scandinavian princess. A union of immense political importance, securing alliances and succession. And should this photograph ever see the light of day, should the princess or her family discover his past liaison, the engagement, and potentially his entire kingdom's stability, would be jeopardized. Irene Adler, it seems, is threatening to send this photograph to the princess on the day of the wedding. It's blackmail, pure and simple, but laced with the bitter sting of a scorned lover's retribution. Holmes, initially, is almost amused. A king, undone by a photograph. But as the gravity of the situation sinks in, as he sees the genuine distress of this powerful man, his professional interest is piqued. Chapter 2, The Bizarre Business of Red Hair. Alright, welcome back, my fellow armchair detectives and lovers of the peculiar. Last time, we dipped our toes into the murky waters of Victorian London, setting the stage for the greatest mind in detective fiction. Today, we're diving headfirst into a case that truly embodies the bizarre, a puzzle so outlandish, so utterly improbable, that it could only spring from the ingenious mind of a certain Dr. Conan Doyle. This, my friends, is Chapter 2, The Bizarre Business of Red Hair, and we're zeroing in on one of Holmes's most delightfully convoluted cases, the Red-Headed League. It's a story that perfectly showcases Holmes's unique ability to untangle the most tangled threads of human ingenuity, both good and bad. It's a case that reminds us that sometimes, the most audacious crimes are hidden behind the most absurd distractions. Now, imagine this. You're Sherlock Holmes, enjoying a quiet morning at 221B Baker Street, perhaps nursing a cup of coffee strong enough to wake the dead, when Dr. Watson bursts in, practically dragging behind him a man whose most striking feature is a mane of hair that could rival a magnificent autumn sunset. This is our client, Mr. Jabez Wilson, and let me tell you, he's a sight for sore eyes, especially for a man like Holmes who thrives on the unusual, the anomalous, the things that simply don't fit into the mundane tapestry of everyday life. He's the kind of client who announces, without even needing to speak, that a truly fascinating puzzle has arrived. Wilson isn't your typical client. He's a pawnbroker, a man of simple means, with a face that speaks of quiet industry, a certain honest, plodding quality, if a little bewildered by life's more unexpected curveballs. He exudes a kind of provincial earnestness that makes his story all the more perplexing, making you feel a pang of sympathy for his earnest confusion. But what truly sets him apart, what makes him the star of this particular show, is that magnificent head of hair, flaming red, as Watson so eloquently puts it, a hue so vibrant it almost seems to glow with an inner fire. And it's this very attribute, this genetic quirk, this glorious burst of crimson, that has landed him in the most preposterous, the most utterly baffling predicament imaginable. It's a plot point so unique, it's almost laughable, if it weren't so central to a serious crime. So, Wilson settles in, looking a bit like a bewildered ginger cat who's wandered into a particularly intellectual tea party, perhaps fidgeting nervously with his hat or tugging at his waistcoat, and begins to spin his extraordinary tale. It started, he explains, with an advertisement, not just any advertisement, mind you, but one so specific, so utterly bonkers in its requirements, it should have immediately sent alarm bells ringing louder than Big Ben. To the Red-Headed League, on account of the bequest of the late Ezekiah Hopkins, of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, USA, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the League to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. All red-headed men who are sound in body and mind, and over the age of 21, are eligible. £4 a week. In those days, that was a princely sum for nominal services. Think about it, a decent working man, toiling away in a factory or on the docks, might make £2 or £3 a week for hard labor, for back-breaking, sweat-inducing effort. £4 for basically doing nothing? My personal alarm bells would be going off like a fire engine at a cat convention, and I'd be checking for hidden cameras, fine print, and perhaps a polite exit strategy. But Wilson, bless his trusting, perhaps slightly naive soul, was intrigued. After all, who wouldn't be tempted by such an offer? His young assistant, Vincent Spaulding, a bright, sharp lad, though perhaps a little too clever for his own good, with a peculiar splash of acid on his forehead and perpetually dirty knees, a detail Holmes, of course, instantly clocks with a mental tick in his internal database. Well, Spaulding had urged him to the acid stain? perhaps a clever piece of misdirection, or a remnant from an earlier, unrelated criminal venture, hinting at another skill set. Holmes is connecting the dots that aren't even visible yet to anyone else, sketching out the outline of a monstrous plot that has been hidden in plain sight, obscured by a ludicrous red herring. That evening, the game is afoot, as Holmes would say. But it's not a chase through foggy streets, it's a tense, nerve-wracking waiting game in the pitch black. Holmes, Watson, Peter Jones, a rather theatrical inspector from Scotland Yard, not always the sharpest tool in the shed but earnest enough in his desire to catch villains, and Mr. Merriweather, the director of the City and Suburban Bank, find themselves huddled together in the deep, cold vault of the very same bank that sits directly behind Wilson's pawn shop. It's a high-stakes vigil. Imagine the scene, if you will, and let the hairs on your arms stand up. Utter darkness. The air thick with the metallic tang of old coins, the musty scent of ancient documents, and the heavy, almost palpable silence of immense wealth. The heavy, oppressive quiet of a bank vault, designed to be impenetrable, broken only by the nervous breathing of the men and the slow, inexorable ticking of the grandfather clock somewhere far off, each tick a hammer blow against the passage of time. The only illumination, initially, is a single, hooded lantern, casting eerie, shifting shadows that dance like malevolent ghouls on the cold stone walls and the glinting metal of the strong boxes. It's a place of immense value, and immense vulnerability, where a fortune lies tantalizingly close. Holmes, ever the calm strategist, has brought them here, knowing with an almost supernatural certainty, that tonight is the night. He's explained his theory to them, piece by painstaking piece. The Red-Headed League was nothing but a brilliant, elaborate ruse, a sophisticated piece of misdirection designed to get Jabez Wilson out of his pawn shop for a few hours each day. Why? To allow his clever assistant, Vincent Spaulding, ample time to work undisturbed. Work on what? A tunnel. A tunnel leading directly from Wilson's cellar, underneath the narrow yard, and right into the bank's strong room, which, as luck would have it, contains an immense amount of French gold, newly deposited and barely secured, waiting for transfer. The hours stretch on. Every creak of the old building, every scuttling mouse, every distant hoot of an owl outside, feels amplified, razor sharp in the heavy silence. Watson, a man of action, must be feeling the suspense acutely, his hand perhaps hovering near his trusty revolver, his heart thumping a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Inspector Jones is probably fidgeting, maybe adjusting his uniform, trying to project an air of authority he doesn't entirely feel, acutely aware that his reputation is on the line. and Mr. Merriweather, the bank director, is undoubtedly a bundle of nerves, perhaps sweating profusely in the chill of the vault, picturing his bank's precious gold flowing away like water through a sieve, his career going down with it. The financial ruin, the public scandal, it must have been an agonizing weight. But Holmes is a statue, utterly still, utterly composed, his senses honed, listening, waiting. He knows the criminals are coming. He knows when they are coming, because the League abruptly disbanded, signaling the tunnel's completion and the imminent strike. And he knows where they will emerge. It's a chess game, played out in the dark, with immense stakes, and Holmes is always several moves ahead. Then, faint at first, barely perceptible, a sound. A scratching. A rhythmic scraping. It's coming from below. Closer. Louder. The unmistakable sound of tools on earth, on stone, on wood. It's unmistakable. They are digging. And they are very close. The tension in that vault must have been unbearable, a suffocating blanket that pressed in from all sides. Every muscle tensed, every breath held. The air itself seems to crackle with antic. Chapter 3, The Vanishing Groom. Welcome back, dear listeners, to our journey through the brilliant, often bewildering world of Sherlock Holmes. We've ventured through mysteries of priceless gems and shadowy conspiracies, but today, we step into a realm that's perhaps even more complex, the human heart, and the dark corners it can hide. This is Chapter 3, and it's aptly titled, The Vanishing Groom. And for this particular tale, we dive into one of the most poignant and, frankly, infuriating cases in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, a case of identity. It's a story that perfectly showcases not just Holmes's astonishing deductive powers, but also a rarely seen glimpse into his compassionate, almost paternal, side. It's a side of the great detective that often gets overshadowed by his legendary intellect, but it's just as vital to understanding the man. Imagine, for a moment, the year is 1888. London is a city of gaslight and horse-drawn cabs, of bustling markets and quiet, respectable homes where secrets often fester behind lace curtains. Our client today is Miss Mary Sutherland. And when she first walks into 221B Baker Street, Holmes immediately notes her distinct appearance. She was a woman of about 25, well-dressed, but with a certain clumsiness of gait and a slightly pronounced jaw. But what truly stands out, what immediately tugs at your heartstrings, is her intense short-sightedness. Her large blue eyes were much magnified by the thick glasses which she wore. Can you picture her? A woman who literally sees the world through a blurred lens, making her tragically susceptible to deception, perhaps even willfully blind to the less savory aspects of human nature. There's a sweet, almost naive innocence about her that, for me, makes her story all the more tragic. Mary's background is also important. She lives with her stepfather, Mr. James Windybank, and her stepmother. Now, Mary isn't exactly destitute. She has a small but significant inheritance from her deceased mother, about £100 a year, enough to live comfortably, especially for a single woman in those times. This detail, my friends, is critical. Keep it in your minds. It's the kind of seemingly mundane detail that often holds the key in a Holmesian puzzle, the quiet motive simmering beneath the surface. Then, one evening, at a gasfitter's ball, a perfectly respectable social event for people of their station, she meets him. Hosmer Angel. Ah, Hosmer Angel. Even the name whispers of mystery, doesn't it? From the very beginning, he's an enigma. He's charming, yes, but incredibly elusive. He always visits Mary after dark, never during the day. He's vague about his profession, claiming to work in an office where my duties are so exceedingly onerous that I am never able to leave it until after the day's work is over. He even wears peculiar dark glasses, which he claims are for a sensitive eye, and has thick mutton chop whiskers. A perfect picture of a gentleman, perhaps, but a gentleman perpetually shrouded in shadows, like a character from a Gothic novel stepping onto the bustling streets of Victorian London. Despite these oddities, or perhaps because of them, giving him a romantic, mysterious allure that appeals to Mary's trusting nature, Mary falls deeply in love. Quickly. And Hosmer proposes. Mary, overjoyed, accepts. The wedding day arrives, filled with all the hopes and dreams a young woman carries for her future. She's in the cab, on her way to the church, with Hosmer Angel, or so she believes. He steps out for a moment, just to confirm the church is ready, to make sure everything is perfect for his bride. And he never returns. The cab driver claims no one else left the cab. Hosmer Angel has simply vanished. Poof. Like smoke. As if he were never there at all. Can you imagine the terror, the confusion, the crushing disappointment? One moment, you're on the cusp of a new life. The next, your fiancé has evaporated into thin air. For Mary, it's a profound trauma, and her trusting heart is utterly shattered. She comes to Holmes, desperate for answers, clinging to tea. Chapter 4, Shadows of the Past. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to our journey through the shadowy streets and brilliant minds of Victorian London, and beyond. Today, we're peeling back another layer of the extraordinary world woven by Arthur Conan Doyle, diving headfirst into a case that truly highlights the depths of human nature, the long arm of the past, and the moral complexities even a genius like Sherlock Holmes must grapple with. This isn't just a simple whodunit, no. This is a story that brings the raw, untamed spirit of the Australian goldfields right into the quiet, unassuming English countryside. It's a tale of secrets buried deep, only to resurface with tragic consequences. So, settle in. Grab your favorite warm beverage. Let's open the pages to Chapter 4, Shadows of the Past, and delve into the Boscombe Bay Valley mystery. Imagine, if you will, the serene beauty of Herefordshire. Rolling hills, ancient trees, tranquil rivers. A picture of English pastoral peace, right? But as we so often learn in these stories, even the most idyllic settings can harbor the darkest secrets. And this is precisely where we find ourselves as Holmes and Watson are summoned, not by telegram this time, but by a frantic plea from a young woman named Alice Turner. Her fiancé, James McCarthy, has been arrested for the murder of his own father, Charles McCarthy. Now, the police, bless their diligent but sometimes myopic hearts, are utterly convinced. And why wouldn't they be? The evidence seems damning. Charles McCarthy, a landowner in Boscombe Bay Valley, is found dead by the edge of a pool. His skull brutally crushed. And who is the last person seen with him? His son, James. Not only that, but they had a heated argument just before, overheard by a gamekeeper. James was seen fleeing the scene, carrying a rifle, which, though not the murder weapon, certainly adds to the picture of a young man in distress, perhaps having snapped. The circumstantial evidence piles up like bricks in a wall, leaving little room for doubt in the minds of the local constabulary. But as any seasoned Holmes aficionado knows, if the police are too convinced, it's usually a sign that something is amiss. Holmes, with his characteristic raised eyebrow and keen observational skills, immediately senses a deeper current beneath the surface. He doesn't just look at the obvious, he looks at the unobvious. He looks for the dissonant notes in the symphony of facts. And this, my friends, is where the story truly begins to unravel, thanks to two seemingly minor, almost insignificant details. Two threads that Holmes picks up, threads that the police dismissed as irrelevant. The first, a peculiar cry. The second, a small piece of grey cloth. James McCarthy, during his desperate attempt to clear his name, insists that he heard a distinct sound just before he discovered his father's body. He describes it as a long, drawn-out call. And Holmes, ever the man of encyclopedic knowledge, immediately recognizes it, the cooee. Now, if you're not familiar, the cooee is an Australian Aboriginal call. It's a distinctive, loud, piercing cry used to attract attention over distance. Think about that for a moment. An Australian call, echoing through the quiet English countryside. It's an anomaly. It's a clue. It screams, someone from Australia was here. And it wasn't Charles or James McCarthy. For Holmes, this isn't just noise, it's a geographical fingerprint, a whisper from another continent. It completely contradicts the idea of a solitary confrontation between father and son. Then there's the grey cloth. A small scrap, found clutched in Charles McCarthy's hand. Not his son's. Just a small, seemingly inconsequential piece of fabric. The police likely saw it as debris. But to Holmes, it's a piece of a puzzle, a clue that points to a third party. Someone else was at that spot. Someone else was involved. These two details, the cooee and the grey cloth, are the cracks in the wall of circumstantial evidence, through which Holmes begins to see a much larger, much darker picture. And this is where the title, Chapter 5, The Deadly Seeds. All right, settle in everyone, perhaps dim the lights a little, because for Chapter 5 of our journey through the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, we're diving into a tale that, for me, always casts a long, unsettling shadow. It's a story of pure dread, a race against time, and a rare glimpse into a deeply personal failure for our great detective. We're talking about the 5 Orange Pips, or as I've chosen to title this chapter, The Deadly Seeds. This isn't just a whodunit, it's a profound character study, a chilling encounter with organized evil, and a stark reminder that even the keenest mind can't always outrun fate. Get ready, because this one hits different. Imagine this, the year is 1887. The wind howls outside 221B Baker Street like a banshee, lashing torrents of rain against the windows with a relentless, almost violent drum beat. It's one of those truly dreadful, oppressive nights, the kind where the very air feels thick with unseen danger, and you just want to be safely tucked inside with a roaring fire, far from the world's harsh realities. But even within the cozy, intellectual sanctuary of Baker Street, the world outside insists on intruding. Holmes and Watson, as always, are ensconced in their familiar armchairs, Watson perhaps lost in the pages of a weighty tome, Holmes deep in a meditative cloud of pipe smoke, his sharp mind undoubtedly already solving a dozen hypothetical crimes. But this isn't a night for quiet contemplation or theoretical puzzles. Suddenly, a frantic, desperate knock echoes through the stillness, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. And then, the door bursts open. What steps in is not a seasoned criminal, cool and calculating, nor a sophisticated lady with a complex societal enigma. Instead, it's a young man, barely out of his teens, looking utterly, profoundly terrified. His name is John Openshaw, and the storm outside seems to mirror the tempest raging within him. He's soaking wet, shivering uncontrollably, not just from the biting cold that he's brought in from the night, but from a profound, bone-deep fear that drips from every word he utters, every frantic gesture. You can practically feel his desperation radiating across the room, even through the pages of the book. It's a masterful opening, immediately plunging you, the reader, the listener, into a world of urgent, palpable danger. Conan Doyle doesn't ease you in, he throws you right into the deep end, and you're gasping for air alongside Openshaw. Openshaw's story, delivered in ragged, breathless bursts, is chillingly simple in its premise, yet horrifyingly complex in its implications. It begins with his uncle, Elias Openshaw, a man who, after spending many tumultuous years in America, had returned to England a wealthy but deeply troubled recluse, living in palpable, constant terror. One day, out of the blue, he receives a mysterious envelope. Inside, nothing but 5 dried orange pips, humble orange seeds, you know, the kind you'd absent-mindedly spit out after enjoying the fruit. And on the accompanying paper, 3 stark, menacing letters, KKK. Shortly after receiving this seemingly innocuous yet utterly terrifying message, Elias dies, seemingly of a tragic accident, a fall into a shallow pond. But young Openshaw, and indeed, his father, always suspected otherwise, a feeling of unease that lingered like a bad smell. Then, the horrifying pattern repeats, almost with the precision of a macabre clockwork mechanism. His own father, Joseph Openshaw, inherits the family estate and assumes the role of head of the household. Some years later, another envelope arrives, again containing precisely 5 orange pips, and again, the cryptic, chilling KKK. And just like his uncle before him, his father soon meets a mysterious and violent end, falling into a chalk pit, his death ruled, again, as an accident. Now, young John Openshaw, the last male heir, the very last branch on this cursed family tree, has received his own envelope. Inside, 5 orange pips. On the paper, KKK and a new, terrifyingly specific instruction. Chapter 6, The Beggar and the Gentleman. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you here as we dive deeper into the extraordinary world of Sherlock Holmes. Today, we're cracking open another thrilling case from the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, a story that, for me, really pulls back the curtain on the hidden lives people lead, and the astonishing lengths they'll go to just to get by. So, settle in, maybe grab a cuppa, because this one's a doozy, and it goes by the rather intriguing title, The Man with the Twisted Lip. Chapter title card, Chapter 6, The Beggar and the Gentleman. Our story, and indeed, this entire chapter, kicks off in a place you might not expect to find our esteemed detective, or even Dr. Watson for that matter. It's late, probably past midnight, and Watson is out doing what doctors do, attending to the sick. But this isn't just any sick call. It's a desperate plea from the wife of a man named Asa Whitney. Mr. Whitney, you see, has a rather unfortunate addiction to opium. And as Watson makes his way through the grimy, fog-shrouded streets of London, he's heading straight into the heart of one of the city's darkest, most clandestine corners, an opium den. Imagine, if you will, the scene. The air is thick, heavy with the sweet, cloying, yet somehow suffocating smell of burning opium. It clings to your clothes, seeps into your very skin. The den itself is a labyrinth of shadowy figures, sprawled on mattresses, lost in their own hazy dreams. The only sounds are the low moans, the gurgling of pipes, and the occasional cough cutting through the suffocating silence. It's a truly miserable place, a real den of human despair. Watson, ever the compassionate physician, navigates this unsettling landscape, his medical bag in hand, probably holding his breath a little, trying to find his patient amidst the human wreckage. He finally locates Whitney, slumped and unresponsive. But as he's working to rouse the man, his eyes, still adjusting to the dim, smoky light, catch a familiar silhouette. And who should be lurking in the corner, amidst the attics and the shadows, but Sherlock Holmes himself. Now, Watson, bless his heart, is completely flummoxed. Holmes, he whispers, probably thinking, what on earth is he doing here, because our detective is not one for personal vices, certainly not of this nature. Holmes, ever the enigma, simply raises a languid hand in greeting, a barely perceptible flicker in his keen eyes. He's not here for the opium, of course. He's here hunting, ever the predator of crime, even in such a desolate environment. And that's our first clue that this isn't just a regular night for Watson, it's about to become a case for Holmes. So, what brings Holmes to such an unsavory locale? As it turns out, he's investigating a truly perplexing disappearance, that of a highly respectable, well-to-do gentleman named Neville St. Clair. Now, Neville St. Clair is a man who seems to have it all. He's a successful businessman, a devoted husband to the lovely Mrs. St. Clair, and a loving father. He lives a comfortable, ordinary life in the suburbs, commuting into the city for his work. Everything about him screams upstanding citizen. Except, he vanished. Poof. Gone. The last anyone saw of him was Mrs. St. Clair herself. She was in London, doing some shopping, when she happened to glance up at the window of the dreaded Barometer Bridge opium den, the very one Watson just visited. And there, pressed against the window pane, was her husband, Neville. But here's the kicker, his face was contorted in a look of horror, and behind him, she distinctly saw another man's face, glaring menacingly. Before she could process what she was seeing, her husband was pulled back from the window. Panic-stricken, Mrs. St. Clair rushed into the den, demanding to know where her husband was. The proprietor, a rather shifty character, assured her no one matching her husband's description had entered. But Mrs. St. Clair wasn't convinced. She stormed through the murky labyrinth, eventually finding a small, back room, locked from the eye. He hadn't been murdered, he had simply discarded his respectable persona and, in a moment of panicked exposure, reverted to his disguised identity. The crime wasn't murder, it was a desperate attempt to protect a meticulously constructed lie. The twisted lip wasn't a permanent, disfiguring scar from a beggar's hard life, it was a clever prosthetic, a piece of theatrical makeup, an artistically applied layer of grimace designed to elicit maximum sympathy and maximum profit. The transformation, once Holmes began to literally unmask him, was not just surprising, it was astonishing. The neatly trimmed beard, the tidy hair, the clean skin, even the voice and posture, all emerged from beneath the theatrical grime and carefully practiced mannerisms. It's a profound testament to how deeply and convincingly a person can alter their physical appearance and their entire demeanor, not just to hide from justice, but to actively become someone else entirely for their own ends. What an unbelievable reveal! This stunning revelation, this literal washing away of a deeply ingrained disguise, isn't merely a clever plot twist or a display of Holmes's unmatched deductive prowess. For me, it serves as an incredibly profound and multi-layered commentary on the intricate duality of human nature, and perhaps more cynically, the almost unbelievable lengths men will go to for money, for financial security, or for an escape from perceived financial ruin. Think deeply about it for a moment. Neville St. Clair, a man who, by all outward appearances, was leading a perfectly conventional, even idyllic, life. He had a loving wife, healthy children, a comfortable home, a seemingly respectable job, a solid standing in the community. Everything a Victorian gentleman was supposed to aspire to. But beneath that polished veneer, he harbored a profound, dangerous secret, a dark alter ego born out of sheer financial desperation and, eventually, overwhelming greed. Years prior, St. Clair had, quite by accident, stumbled upon the shockingly lucrative nature of professional begging. He had, initially for a lark or a desperate one-off, disguised himself as a beggar and was astounded to find that in just a few hours, he could earn more than a week's legitimate wages at his supposed respectable job. The immediate lure of easy money, the incredible profit margins derived from playing on public sympathy, was simply too great, too intoxicating, to resist. So, he meticulously became a master of disguise. He painstakingly created the character of Hugh Boone, a persona so utterly convincing, so deeply ingrained, that even his own wife couldn't recognize him when she spotted him begging on the crowded London streets. He maintained two completely separate, diametrically opposed lives, the respectable suburban father and the grotesque, pitiful city beggar. And the opium den, ironically, became more than just a place of despair. It was a crucial part of his elaborate act, a clandestine sanctuary where he could shed his respectable disguise and assume his beggar persona without drawing undue attention, a place where anonymity was not just a luxury but a vital necessity. That fateful day, when his wife spotted him through the window, he was just in the agonizing process of transitioning back to his beggar self, caught in a terrifying moment of almost unbearable exposure. He was, in essence, caught between his two worlds. This entire story, this incredible deception, makes you truly ponder the multitude of masks people wear in their daily lives. How many respectable gentlemen or ladies, seemingly leading lives of quiet dignity, walk among us, secretly harboring hidden lives, clandestine professions, or profound, unspoken struggles. It powerfully highlights the immense pressure of societal expectations, the relentless desire for wealth and status, and the often morally ambiguous compromises people are willing to make to achieve or maintain that perceived security. St. Clair didn't genuinely want to be a beggar, that was merely the means to an end. He wanted the financial freedom. Chapter 7, The Christmas Goose Puzzle. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so incredibly glad you're here, settling in with me, perhaps with a warm cup of tea or coffee, for another truly delightful, almost festive, deep dive into the extraordinary world of Sherlock Holmes. We're journeying, as you know, through the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, a collection that just keeps on giving, chapter after chapter. And today, we're landing squarely on a story that, for me, just screams cozy holiday mystery. It's a charming, slightly whimsical, and ultimately very humane little tale, perfectly suited for this time of year, even if we're not quite at Christmas itself. It's all about the spirit of the season, the surprising turns of fate, and it's called The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle. Now, if you're like me, you probably associate the holiday season, whether it's Christmas, New Year's, or just that general festive feeling, with warmth, with good cheer, with perhaps a bit of frantic last-minute shopping, and certainly, with delicious food. The aroma of roasting meats, sweet treats, all that good stuff. But what if all that wonderful holiday cheer was suddenly, rudely, interrupted by a shocking theft? And what if the key to solving that bewildering theft involved a rather unfortunate, somewhat bedraggled goose and a very battered, almost comical, old felt hat? That, my friends, is exactly where our story, with all its quirky charm, brilliantly kicks off. It's a testament to Conan Doyle's genius that he can take such mundane objects and weave them into a web of intrigue. Imagine this scene. It's the day after Christmas. Boxing Day. A time when most of London, I picture it vividly, is nursing a bit of a holiday hangover, perhaps reminiscing about indulgent feasts, recounting family anecdotes, or simply enjoying a quiet moment before the return to daily routines. But not Sherlock Holmes. Oh no. For Holmes, every single day is an opportunity for unparalleled observation, for razor-sharp deduction, for the intellectual thrill of the chase. And on this particular frosty Boxing Day morning, he's presented with a truly peculiar, almost mundane, yet ultimately world-shaking set of circumstances by his loyal companion and chronicler, the ever-reliable Dr. Watson. The stage, my friends, is set with two seemingly innocuous items. On Holmes's table, lying in wait for his discerning gaze, are a rather disreputable, almost comically worn-out felt hat, the kind you might see adorning the head of a slightly down-on-his-luck gentleman, and a perfectly plump, if somewhat deceased and very much out of place, Christmas goose. Now, let's be absolutely clear, these aren't just any old hat and goose. Oh no. These are artifacts of a minor scuffle, a small moment of urban chaos, that occurred in the early hours of the morning, near Gooch Street, a place bustling even on a holiday. A passerby, a commissionaire named Peterson, a good, honest, salt-of-the-earth kind of fellow, was making his way home when he witnessed a brief, frantic kerfuffle. A man, described as tall, with a short coat and a rather distinctive, perhaps memorable, hat, was suddenly assaulted by a group of ruffians, street toughs looking for trouble. Peterson, being a decent citizen, and perhaps imbued with a bit of Christmas spirit to do good, intervened. The ruffians, startled by his presence, fled into the night. The tall man, in his haste and perhaps a state of panic or shock, also bolted, too startled, perhaps, or too embarrassed by the whole affair, to retrieve his suddenly dropped belongings. And what were those? His battered old hat, and the very same goose he was carrying for his highly anticipated Christmas dinner. So, Peterson, ever the honest and upstanding fellow, seeing the items abandoned, picked them up and, knowing Holmes's reputation for making sense of the nonsensical, dutifully brings these items to Baker Street. Now, I absolutely love this initial scene because it's pure, unadulterated Holmes. Most people, any ordinary person, would see a lost hat and a dead goose, perhaps. Chapter 8, Terror in the Night. Welcome back, dear listeners, to The Games Afoot, our deep dive into the extraordinary world of Sherlock Holmes. We've journeyed through bustling London streets, navigated the labyrinthine minds of criminals, and witnessed the brilliance of Baker Street's finest. But tonight, we descend into something far more primal, far more chilling. Tonight, we face not just a puzzle, but a terror that stalks the very air of a darkened room. This is Chapter 8, Terror in the Night, and our focus is one of Arthur Conan Doyle's most iconic and deeply unsettling tales, The Adventure of the Speckled Band. If you thought we'd seen the darkest corners of human depravity, prepare yourselves. This one will make you check under your bed. And perhaps, even more unsettlingly, above it. The very title, Terror in the Night, isn't just for dramatic effect, it's the core experience of this story, both for its ill-fated victims and for us, the readers, as we witness Holmes and Watson confront a truly venomous evil. It's a masterclass in suspense, a testament to Doyle's ability to craft a story that crawls under your skin and stays there, long after the last page is turned. So, dim the lights, perhaps grab a warm drink, you'll need it, and let's step into the oppressive shadows of Stoke Moran. Our story begins, as so many of Holmes's cases do, with a visitor at Baker Street. But this isn't just any visitor. She is Miss Helen Stoner, and the moment she enters that iconic room, even before she utters a word, you can feel the dread radiating from her. Doyle paints a picture of a woman utterly consumed by fear, not a vague, generalist anxiety, but a potent, specific terror that has seeped into her very bones. She's pale, trembling, with eyes that seem to have seen horrors that no young woman should ever witness. It's a fear so profound that Holmes, ever the stoic observer, cannot help but be moved by it. Helen's tale is a tragedy woven into a mystery. She lives with her stepfather, Dr. Grimesby Roylott, a man whose reputation precedes him like a dark cloud. A man of immense physical strength, violent temper, and a rather notorious history of unrestrained brutality, having once beaten his Indian butler to death. Charming, right? This is the man who controls her life, her finances, and her very environment. 2 years prior, her beloved sister, Julia, died under truly baffling circumstances. Julia, too, was engaged to be married, a detail that, in retrospect, screams a warning. On the night of her death, Julia had heard a low whistle and a metallic clang, then suddenly, she burst from her room, screaming, "Oh, my God! Helen!" It was the band. The speckled band. Before Helen could even comprehend her sister's frantic words, Julia collapsed and died, her face contorted in an expression of sheer terror. The official verdict was cerebral apoplexy, a sudden brain hemorrhage. But Helen, and frankly, anyone with a shred of common sense, knew there was more to it. How could a speckled band cause a sudden brain hemorrhage? It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. And that, my friends, is where our terror truly begins. Now, Helen herself is engaged. And here's where the narrative's ingenious, insidious trap starts to snap shut. Due to some ongoing renovations at Stoke Moran, how convenient, wouldn't you say? Helen has been forced to move out of her own bedroom and, by sheer, horrific coincidence, into her sister Julia's old room. The very room where Julia died. Can you imagine the dread? The absolute psychological torment of lying in the bed where your beloved sister drew her last, terrified breath, whispering enigmatic, terrifying words. Every night, as she lies there, she starts to hear it too. That same low, whistling sound. It's subtle, barely perceptible, but it's there, a phantom echo of her sister's last moments. Her fear isn't just a vague premonition, it's a cold, hard, rational terror born from a shared experience with a dead sibling. She's sleeping in a death room, hearing death's song. It's a masterstroke of psychological Chapter 9, The Hydraulic Press. Alright, welcome back, my fellow literary explorers. We're diving headfirst into Chapter 9 of our journey through the shadowy streets and brilliant minds of Victorian London, as seen through the eyes of Arthur Conan Doyle. And this chapter, I've titled it The Hydraulic Press. A bit ominous, I know. It's not just a fancy name, it's a very literal and rather terrifying hint at the heart of our next case, the adventure of the engineer's thumb. If you thought Sherlock Holmes cases were always about polite society and stolen jewels, prepare yourselves, because this one plunges us into a world of raw desperation, brutal violence, and a rather unique form of industrial horror. It's a story that starts with a scream, ends with a mystery, and leaves a permanent mark, both physical and psychological, on its unfortunate protagonist. So, settle in, perhaps grab a comforting cup of tea, because the tale of Victor Hatherley is not for the faint of heart, but it is undeniably one of the most viscerally impactful stories in the entire collection. Imagine, if you will, the unassuming morning routine of Dr. Watson. He's probably having his breakfast, perhaps glancing at the morning paper, anticipating a quiet day of consultations or a philosophical debate with Holmes. But then, the tranquility shatters. A young man arrives at 221B Baker Street, not just distressed, but horrifically injured. His name is Victor Hatherley, and the first thing Watson notices, the thing that grabs you by the throat, is his hand. Specifically, his thumb. Or rather, what used to be his thumb. It's bandaged, certainly, but the sheer brutality of the injury shines through the linen. Watson, the veteran of the Second Afghan War, a man who has seen his share of gore and trauma, is genuinely shocked. He describes it as having been chopped or crushed, torn away at the base, a horrible, ragged wound. The imagery is immediate, stark, and utterly unsettling. This isn't a clean cut or a simple fracture, it's a violent disfigurement, an act of almost industrial savagery that screams of malice, not accident. For a moment, even Holmes, the unflappable detective, is sidelined, because the immediate need is medical attention. Watson, ever the physician, takes charge, tending to the wound, trying to make sense of the sheer devastation before him. This opening, right off the bat, sets a tone of visceral danger. It tells us that whatever happened to Victor Hatherley, it wasn't an accident in the garden. It was deliberate, it was brutal, and it left an indelible mark. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What sequence of events, what desperate circumstances, could lead a seemingly ordinary professional man to such a horrifying fate? It's a stark reminder that beneath the veneer of Victorian civility, there lurks a darker, more primitive world where human lives can be torn apart, quite literally, in the blink of an eye. The image of that mangled thumb is a hook that pulls you straight into the grim heart of the story, compelling you to uncover the how and, more importantly, the why. And so, once Hatherley is stabilized, the story begins to unravel, slowly, painfully, much like the layers of bandage Watson applied. Victor Hatherley, we learn, is a hydraulic engineer, a profession that sounds solid, reliable, a cornerstone of Victorian industry. But life, as it so often does, had dealt him a cruel hand. He'd recently lost a lucrative partnership, leaving him on the brink of financial ruin, scraping by, hoping for any opportunity to salvage his career. And that, my friends, is where the desperation enters, a powerful, dangerous motivator that can blind us to red flags. One evening, a mysterious man appears, a Colonel Lysander Stark, or so he calls himself. He presents an urgent, highly unusual, and incredibly lucrative offer, a 50 guinea payment for a night's work, plus another 50 upon completion, for a job that sounds deceptively simple. The catch? It must be done in absolute secrecy, in the dead of night, far from prying eyes. Now, for anyone thinking clearly, this woe. Chapter 10, The American Connection. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to our deep dive into the extraordinary mind of Sherlock Holmes. Today, we're turning the page to Chapter 10, a segment I've affectionately titled The American Connection. And what a connection it is! We're about to unpack one of the most intriguing, and in some ways, most poignant cases in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the adventure of the noble bachelor. Now, if you've been following along, you'll know that Doyle often used these stories not just as thrilling mysteries, but as windows into the social fabric of Victorian England. And sometimes, those windows open up to reveal an outside influence, a fascinating contrast, or, as in this case, a pivotal character from across the Atlantic. So, let's set the scene, shall we? Imagine, if you will, the bustling, high society world of late 19th century London. We're talking about the crème de la crème, the aristocratic circles where lineage and social standing often trumped, well, just about everything else. And at the heart of this particular social whirl is a man of impeccable breeding, Lord Robert St. Simon. He's a man accustomed to getting what he wants, a nobleman, a bachelor of some renown, who has finally decided to take the plunge into matrimony. His chosen bride? Miss Hattie Doran. And here's where our American connection truly begins to sparkle, or perhaps, in this case, to mysteriously vanish. Hattie Doran isn't just any bride, she's an American heiress, the daughter of a Californian senator, with a fortune that makes even Lord St. Simon's noble standing seem a little less dazzling. This, my friends, is a marriage of convenience, perhaps, but also one of significant social import. Think about it: old money, old titles meeting new money, new world dynamism. It's a classic setup for drama, isn't it? The wedding day arrives, bathed in the expected glow of anticipation and high society fanfare. The church is filled with guests, the air thick with the scent of lilies and the murmur of polite conversation. Lord Robert St. Simon, looking every inch the distinguished groom, stands at the altar. And then, the bride, Miss Hattie Doran, makes her grand entrance, a vision in white, walking down the aisle towards her waiting future. But here's where the story takes its first dramatic, almost unthinkable, turn. The ceremony proceeds. Vows are exchanged. The rings are placed. The knot, as they say, is tied. She is Mrs. Lord Robert St. Simon. They are, officially, husband and wife. The congregation breathes a collective sigh of relief and happiness. They process out of the church, ready to step into the waiting carriage and head to the lavish reception. And then, it happens. Or rather, it doesn't happen. Immediately after the wedding, in the bustling vestry, with everyone still aglow from the ceremony, Hattie Doran simply disappears. Vanishes into thin air. One moment she's there, Mrs. Lord Robert St. Simon, the next she is gone. Not a trace. Not a note. Not a whisper. Just a profound, inexplicable absence that sends shockwaves through the entire wedding party. Can you imagine the scene? The shock, the confusion, the sheer scandal. A bride, literally minutes after saying I do, just gone. It's a jaw-dropping premise, isn't it? And it's precisely this kind of impossible situation that sends Lord St. Simon, utterly distraught and humiliated, straight to Baker Street, to the door of Sherlock Holmes. Now, Holmes, ever the astute observer of human nature, doesn't just listen to the frantic recounting of the events. He zeroes in on the subtle details, the fleeting glances, the things that others, caught up in the emotional whirlwind, would entirely miss. And one of the most crucial elements he picks up on, even from Lord St. Simon's rather self-absorbed account, is the behavior of the bride herself. Lord St. Simon describes Hattie as having been silent and subdued throughout the entire day, even on her wedding day. Think about that for a moment. Most brides, even those in arranged marriages, display at least some outward sign of excitement. Think about that for a moment. A woman, seemingly trapped by circumstance and expectation, finds her way back to her authentic self, guided by a past love. It's a powerful narrative, isn't it? And it just goes to show you, no matter how much you try to box people into categories of noble or heiress, the human heart often has its own plans. Thank you for joining me on this fascinating journey through the American Connection. We've delved into deception, societal snobbery, and the enduring power of a secret love. Next time, we'll continue our adventures, peeling back yet another layer of the incredible mind of Sherlock Holmes. Until then, keep those deductions sharp, and remember to always look for the details that everyone else misses. Farewell for now. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to our deep dive into the extraordinary mind of Sherlock Holmes. Today, we're turning the page to Chapter 10, a segment I've affectionately titled The American Connection. And what a connection it is! We're about to unpack one of the most intriguing, and in some ways, most poignant cases in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the adventure of the noble bachelor. Now, if you've been following along, you'll know that Doyle often used these stories not just as thrilling mysteries, but as windows into the social fabric of Victorian England. And sometimes, those windows open up to reveal an outside influence, a fascinating contrast, or, as in this case, a pivotal character from across the Atlantic. The collision of cultures, the clash of expectations, it all plays a vital role in setting the stage for the unfolding drama. It reminds us that even in the seemingly rigid structures of Victorian society, the world was shrinking, and new perspectives, new forces, were always at play. So, let's set the scene, shall we? Imagine, if you will, the bustling, high society world of late 19th century London. We're talking about the crème de la crème, the aristocratic circles where lineage and social standing often trumped, well, just about everything else. The kind of world where appearances were everything, and a misstep could lead to irreparable scandal. And at the heart of this particular social world is a man of impeccable breeding, Lord Robert St. Simon. He's a man accustomed to getting what he wants, a nobleman, a bachelor of some renown, who has finally decided to take the plunge into matrimony. He represents the old guard, the established order, a pillar of society whose every move is scrutinized. His chosen bride? Miss Hattie Doran. And here's where our American connection truly begins to sparkle, or perhaps, in this case, to mysteriously vanish. Hattie Doran isn't just any bride, she's an American heiress, the daughter of a Californian senator, with a fortune that makes even Lord St. Simon's noble standing seem a little less dazzling. This, my friends, is a marriage of convenience, perhaps, but also one of significant social import. Think about it: old money, old titles meeting new money, new world dynamism. It's a narrative we see played out time and again in history, this exchange of wealth for status, or status for access to wealth. It's a classic setup for drama, isn't it? The stage is meticulously set, the characters perfectly cast, for what should be the most straightforward of high society events. The wedding day arrives, bathed in the expected glow of anticipation and high society fanfare. The church is filled with guests, the air thick with the scent of lilies and the murmur of polite conversation. Every detail is meticulously arranged, from the floral arrangements to the seating plan, reflecting the prestige of the families involved. Lord Robert St. Simon, looking every inch the distinguished groom, stands at the altar, embodying the calm assurance of a man fulfilling his destiny. And then, the bride, Miss Hattie Doran, makes her grand entrance, a vision in white, walking down the aisle towards her waiting future, towards a life of noble privilege and societal prominence. But here's where the story takes its first dramatic Al. Chapter 11, Broken Crown, Broken Trust. Welcome back, dear friends, to The Games Afoot, our ongoing journey through the indelible world of Sherlock Holmes. Today, we delve into a chapter that, to my mind, encapsulates a particularly poignant and unsettling truth about human nature, the shattering of trust, often by those closest to us. We're calling this chapter 11, Broken Crown, Broken Trust, and it's built around one of the most intriguing cases in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the adventure of the Beryl Coronet. Now, you might recall from our previous discussions how often Holmes cases revolve around secrets and hidden motives. But what happens when those secrets involve not just a simple theft, but an object of immense national importance, entrusted to someone whose entire reputation hinges on its safety? And what happens when the prime suspect is the person you'd least expect, and perhaps, the person you'd most want to believe innocent? That's the emotional crucible we're stepping into today. Imagine, if you will, the sheer weight of responsibility. Not just financial, but reputational, national, even historical. This is precisely the burden borne by our first key player in this drama, Mr. Alexander Holder, the eminent and respected banker. Holder isn't just any banker, he's a man of impeccable standing, a pillar of the community, whose entire professional life is built upon a foundation of trust and discretion. And it is to him that a truly priceless national treasure has been entrusted, the Beryl Coronet. This isn't just a pretty bauble, mind you. This is a crown, studded with 39 magnificent barrels, a symbol of royal lineage and national heritage, loaned by the royal family themselves. Think of the historical significance, the artistic value, the sheer unquantifiable worth. This coronet is almost certainly priceless, yet it finds itself in the possession of Alexander Holder, not as a gift, but as collateral. Yes, you heard that right. Collateral. For a private loan of a staggering £50,000 to a rather important, though unnamed, client. Just try to put yourself in Holder's shoes for a moment. You're a banker, accustomed to handling vast sums, but always in figures, always on ledgers. Now, an actual, physical, irreplaceable piece of history sits in your vault, and your career, your good name, perhaps even your very sanity, depend on its absolute safety. The stress must have been immense, a constant hum of anxiety beneath the surface of his otherwise orderly life. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow, every unexpected sound in the night must have felt amplified. He takes every precaution, naturally. He keeps it in his private study, locked away, believing it to be the safest place within his own home. He inspects it daily, even hourly, just to reassure himself of its intactness. This isn't just about money for Holder, it's about honor, about a sacred trust placed upon him. The implications of even a scratch, let alone a loss, are almost unthinkable. This is the stage for our tragedy, this almost unbearable weight of expectation and responsibility, precariously balanced on a single, gleaming object. Now, the scene is set, the tension almost palpable. And then, as is often the case in these stories, the unthinkable happens. The night descends, quiet and seemingly peaceful. Holder, still troubled by the presence of the coronet, can't quite sleep. Around 2 in the morning, a sudden noise jolts him awake. A subtle disturbance, the creak of a door, a shuffle. His heart, already on edge, must have leapt into his throat. He knows instantly, instinctively, that something is wrong. He rushes to his study, the room where the coronet is kept. And there, bathed in the dim, revealing light of the early morning, is a tableau that would haunt any father's nightmares. His son, Arthur, stands in the study, holding the barrel coronet. But it's not just being held, it's broken. 3 of its magnificent barrels are gone, ripped from their setting. Can you even begin to imagine the gut-wrenching despair that must have consumed Alexan? Chapter 12, The Locked Wing. Welcome back, my dear listeners, to our ongoing journey through the labyrinthine mind of Sherlock Holmes. We've crisscrossed foggy London, peered into the darkest corners of human nature, and marveled at the sheer, almost supernatural, deductive brilliance of Baker Street's most famous resident. Each case, a unique puzzle, each client, a fresh thread in the grand, intricate tapestry of human experience. Today, we're diving headfirst into Chapter 12 of our series, which brings us face to face with The Locked Wing, a title that, even before we get into the minutiae of the plot, just screams mystery, doesn't it? It conjures images of dusty secrets, forbidden passages, and the kind of gothic dread that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, cling with anticipation and unease. This particular tale, The Adventure of the Copper Beeches, is a masterclass in the unsettling, a slow burn of creeping dread that really, truly highlights the profound vulnerability of individuals, especially women, navigating the often perilous, sometimes downright predatory, landscape of Victorian society. It's a story that will make you question what you would do for money, what you would sacrifice, and perhaps, more chillingly, what you wouldn't do. Part 1, Violet Hunter's Peculiar Predicament. Our story opens, as many good home stories do, with a distressed client arriving at 221B Baker Street. This time, it's a young woman named Violet Hunter. And, oh, what a predicament she finds herself in. Violet, a governess by profession, a role that, let's be honest, in these stories, is practically a magnet for trouble, a beacon for the bizarre and dangerous, has been offered a position that is, to put it mildly, deeply, deeply strange. Imagine, for a moment, you're looking for a job. You're talented, capable, but perhaps a bit down on your luck, striving for independence in a world that didn't always make it easy for women. You go for an interview, and the potential employer, a Mr. Jeffro Rucastle, presents you with an offer that seems almost too good to be true. He offers you an exorbitant salary. We're talking £100 a year, which in Victorian times was a lot of money for a governess. More than double the going rate, in fact. That alone should set off a veritable cacophony of alarms, shouldn't it? When something seems too good to be true, when a deal is inexplicably generous, it almost always is. But the temptation, the allure of financial security, the promise of a comfortable future, can be an incredibly powerful motivator, especially for a young woman of limited means and burgeoning ambition in that particular era. It's a siren song, pulling her towards what might be a perilous shore. But the salary isn't the only oddity. Oh no, my friends. Mr. Rucastle comes with a list of conditions that would make anyone, even the most desperate, pause, hesitate, and perhaps, eventually, give in. First, and perhaps the most strikingly bizarre, he insists that Violet cut her hair. Not just a trim, mind you, not a simple adjustment for practicality, but her beautiful, long, auburn hair, cut short, boyish, practically shorn to an almost unsightly length. Can you imagine? Your personal appearance, a part of your identity, your feminine pride, dictated by your employer, not for hygiene, not for ease of work, but for some unknown, unsettling reason. It's an immediate, jarring violation, a symbolic stripping away of herself, a demand for conformity that goes far beyond professional boundaries. It's like saying, to work here, you must erase who you are. Then there are the clothes. She's told she must wear specific dresses, a blue one, a brown one, at particular times. Not her own clothes, but ones provided, ones that perhaps don't quite fit her frame or her sense of style, ones that definitely don't feel like her. It's almost like a uniform, yes, but one with a sinister undertone, a costume for a play she doesn't understand, a character she hasn't been cast as. And it doesn't stop there. Oh, it gets weirder. She's asked to sit in certain chairs, in specific parts of the house, at predetermined hours. It's almost as if she's being arranged, positioned, like a piece of furniture or a mannequin. And the final, chilling instruction, the cherry on top of this very strange sundae, she must never question her employer's actions, no matter how peculiar, how illogical, how frankly terrifying they seem. She must simply obey. No inquiries, no challenges, just blind, unquestioning compliance. Now, pause with me for a second. Put yourself directly in Violet Hunter's shoes. You're offered life-changing money, a chance at a brighter future, but at the profound cost of your personal autonomy, your very appearance, your right to even ask questions about the deeply disturbing circumstances you find yourself in. What would you do? On one hand, the financial stability, the escape from uncertainty, is enticing, almost overwhelmingly so. On the other, every fiber of your being, your gut instinct, that small, insistent voice of caution, must have been screaming at her, no. This is wrong. This is dangerous. But then the other voice, the practical, desperate voice, would whisper, think of the security, Violet. Think of the future this money could buy. Think of the independence. It's a classy. Part 2. The eerie atmosphere and the locked wing. So, Violet Hunter, despite her reservations, arrives at Copper Beeches, the Rucastle estate nestled deep in the serene yet strangely isolated countryside of Hampshire. And let me tell you, the house itself is practically a character in this story. It's a grand, sprawling, almost imposing place, surrounded by ancient, magnificent beech trees, their leaves a deep, burnished copper, hence the name, casting a perpetual, almost blood-red shadow across the grounds, creating an atmosphere that felt less like a welcoming home and more like a stage for some dark, Gothic drama. It's beautiful, yes, in a stately, old-world way, but it immediately gives off an aura of seclusion, of secrets buried deep within its ancient walls, a palpable sense of being cut off from the rest of the world. Inside, the atmosphere is no less unsettling. There's Mr. Rucastle himself, a large, boisterous man with a strangely unsettling laugh that somehow never quite reached his eyes, a perpetual, almost plastered-on smile that felt less genuinely jovial and more like a mask he wore to conceal something deeply unpleasant, something almost predatory. His wife, Mrs. Rucastle, is a faded, anxious woman, clearly under her husband's tyrannical thumb, constantly wringing her hands, her eyes darting nervously. And then there's their child, Edward, a rather unpleasant, spoiled, and strangely cruel boy. The entire household feels off-kilter, strained, like a meticulously rehearsed performance put on for Violet's benefit, every interaction feeling artificial, every smile a lie. But the truly chilling element, the one that gives this chapter its evocative title, is the existence of the mysterious locked wing of the house. From the moment Violet arrives, she senses it. A whole section of the sprawling manor, always closed off, always silent, always inaccessible, yet always present, a brooding, ominous mystery at the very heart of the home. She hears faint whispers carried on the wind. She catches fleeting glimpses of shadows at darkened windows, and the air around it just feels heavy, pregnant with untold secrets. Violet, despite her explicit instruction not to question anything, is naturally inquisitive. She's living under a set of conditions that defy logic, that go against every fiber of common sense, and her inherent curiosity, combined with a healthy, burgeoning dose of fear, begins to gnaw at her, picking away at her composure. She notices other odd occurrences, strange, faint noises emanating from that forbidden wing, the Rucastle's unusually agitated behavior whenever the topic is even remotely broached, or when a stray glance falls upon that forbidden section of the house. She also observes their peculiar family dog, a mastiff, a massive, powerful creature, kept in a state of semi-starvation, its ribs perhaps showing beneath its rough coat, its eyes glazed and unhappy, almost feral. This detail, by the way, is a classic Doyle move, masterful foreshadowing, a ticking time bomb waiting patiently to be unleashed. her unease escalates rapidly. One day, she sees a figure, a pale, haunted face, glimpsed fleetingly through a window in the locked wing. A face that looks remarkably, disturbingly like hers. And that's when the pieces start clicking into place, horrifyingly, for Violet. The hair cutting, the specific dresses, the sitting positions, it wasn't about her as a governess, it wasn't about her duties to the child. It was about making her impersonate someone else, to be a living, breathing substitute. She realizes, with a cold dread clutching at her heart, that she's caught in a deeply dangerous game, a deception she doesn't fully comprehend but instinctively knows is sinister, with potentially deadly stakes. That's when she makes the supremely wise decision to return to London, to the one man who possesses the intellect and courage to untangle such a diabolical web of deceit, Sherlock Holmes. And Holmes, ever the connoisseur of the bizarre, the master of observation, listens intently. He sees the pattern. Part 3, Unraveling the Mystery, the imprisoned daughter. When Holmes and Watson arrive at Copper Beeches, the tension, already thick enough to cut with a knife, becomes almost palpable. Holmes, with his characteristic blend of meticulous observation, razor-sharp deduction, and profound intuition, quickly grasps the true gravity of the situation. He understands that the locked wing is not merely a storeroom or a suite of disused chambers, it is central, vitally important, to the Rucastle's cruel and elaborate charade. It is the core of their twisted secret. Their investigation is classic Holmes. They don't simply kick down doors or make rash accusations. They observe every detail, every nuance of the Rucastle's behavior. They deduce, they gather intelligence, and they wait patiently for the opportune moment to strike, to uncover the truth. They learn about the Rucastle's history, the mysterious absence of their actual daughter, Alice, who was believed to have left for America or, more darkly, to have tragically died. Holmes suspects foul play, sensing, with that almost preternatural intuition of his, that Alice's disappearance is directly, irrevocably linked to Violet Hunter's strange, almost theatrical, employment. The crucial moment, the turning point in this unsettling narrative, comes when Holmes and Watson manage to gain entry into the formidable locked wing. Perhaps through a clever distraction, a cunning diversion of Rucastle's attention, or by exploiting a moment of weakness in his otherwise meticulous surveillance. And what they find there is truly, utterly harrowing. Behind those imposing, locked doors, in a room deliberately kept dark, damp, and squalid, a place meant for erasure, they discover not a ghost, not a figment of imagination, but a living, breathing, suffering person. It is Alice Rucastle herself. The real daughter. She is emaciated, frightfully weak, her once vibrant spirit dimmed, her eyes hollowed by fear and isolation, and clearly suffering from prolonged, torturous captivity and neglect. Her long hair, once perhaps as beautiful and lustrous as violets, is matted and unkempt, a stark contrast to the imposed boyish cut on our intrepid governess. She has been systematically starved, kept in cruel isolation, essentially erased from existence, a phantom in her own home. The horror of the discovery is profound, gut-wrenching. Alice is not just a prisoner, she's a ghost in her own home, a living testament to her father's monstrous greed. The motive, as Holmes swiftly and chillingly deduces, is a testament to the depths of human depravity, inheritance. Alice was engaged to a man named Fowler, and if she married, a significant portion of the family inheritance, tied to her late mother's estate, would legally pass to her and her husband, rather than remaining under Mr. Rucastle's absolute, covetous control. To prevent this, to hoard every last penny, Mr. Rucastle, with the complicity of his terrified, subjugated wife, concocted this elaborate, truly monstrous scheme. He locked Alice away, ensuring she couldn't marry, couldn't communicate, couldn't even be seen by the outside world. And Violet Hunter? She was merely a decoy, a stand-in, a flesh and blood prop in his macabre play. Her hair was cut, she was dressed in specific, uncharacteristic clothes, and made to sit in particular places, all to create the insidious illusion that she was Alice Rucastle, living happily, albeit peculiarly, at home. This elaborate charade was designed to deter Alice's fiancé, Mr. Fowler, or any other curious individual who might come looking for her, from suspecting anything amiss. They were trying to fool the outside world, to buy time, perhaps even to drive Alice to madness or, more chillingly, to her death, so the entire inheritance would revert entirely to him. The emotional impact of finding Alice is immense, heartbreaking. It's a stark, brutal reminder of the profound vulnerability of women in a patriarchal society, where fortunes could be dictated by male relatives, and where a cunning, ruthless man could wield such. Part 4, the climax, the Mastiff's fury. The discovery of Alice in the locked wing inevitably leads to a dramatic, dangerous, and truly terrifying confrontation. Mr. Rucastle, exposed and cornered, his elaborate house of lies crumbling around him, reveals his true, savage nature. His smiling facade, that mask of false bonhomie, crumbles completely, replaced by a desperate, animalistic rage. He is a man who has lost everything: his elaborate deception, his absolute control, his ill-gotten gains, and he lashes out with terrifying, murderous violence. In a fit of desperation, with nothing left to lose, Mr. Ruckastle unleashes his ultimate weapon of choice, the enormous Mastiff dog. Remember how I mentioned it earlier, kept in a state of semi-starvation, its eyes glazed and unhappy? Well, this wasn't just a quirky detail, a touch of local color. This was a deliberate, calculated act of cruelty, designed to turn the powerful animal into a vicious, unpredictable weapon, a living, breathing engine of destruction. The dog, crazed by hunger, by years of mistreatment, and by a lifetime of being conditioned for aggression, is set upon Holmes and Watson, and potentially Violet Hunter and Alice herself. This moment is pure adrenaline, heart-stopping terror. The sheer size and immense power of a Mastiff, especially one driven to such a frenzied, starved state, is a terrifying prospect. We're talking about a beast capable of inflicting serious, even fatal, injury in a matter of seconds. The tension in this scene is palpable, gripping. You can almost hear the guttural growls, feel the hot, panting breath, the thud of its massive paws as it charges, a blur of muscle and teeth. It's a moment where Holmes's intellectual prowess, his brilliant mind, must give way, if only for a second, to raw, primal, physical danger. It's no longer a battle of wits, but a desperate fight for survival. But Holmes, even in the face of such profound peril, maintains his remarkable composure, his famous sang-froid. Or, more accurately, Watson, ever the brave companion, the steady anchor to Holmes's brilliant mind, rises magnificently to the occasion. In a moment of quick thinking and decisive action, Watson uses his trusty revolver, not to kill the dog, for he is a man of honor and restraint, but to incapacitate it, perhaps wounding it in the leg, or firing a shot past its head, scaring it off and breaking its charge. The precise details vary slightly in adaptations, but the essence remains. The dog is neutralized, its fury turned back against its master, or at least prevented from harming the protagonists. The confrontation ends with Mr. Ruckastle himself falling victim to his own monstrous pet. In the chaos, the Mastiff, either confused, disoriented, or simply in its ravenous, aggressive state, turns on its master, inflicting severe, life-altering injuries. It's a grim, almost poetic justice for a man who used an animal's suffering as a tool of terror, who twisted loyalty into a weapon. He reaps what he sows, devoured by the very terror he meticulously cultivated. Mr. Ruckastle is left maimed, his reign of terror effectively ended, not by a bullet from Watson's gun, but by the very creature he had so cruelly manipulated. In the aftermath, Alice Ruckastle is, thankfully, rescued. She is nursed back to health, slowly, painstakingly, recovering from the physical and psychological scars of her ordeal, and eventually, beautifully, reunited with her fiancé, Mr. Fowler, who had never given up hope, never ceased searching for his lost love. Violet Hunter, shaken but physically unharmed, moves on, forever changed by her harrowing experience, but also wiser, stronger, and more resilient. This concluding confrontation is not just a thrilling climax, it's a powerful commentary on the ultimate futility of evil, the insidious way in which cruelty, inevitably, often devours its own perpetrator. Holmes's brilliance isn't just in solving the intricate puzzle, but in restoring justice, in shining a powerful, unwavering light into the darkest corners of human depravity and pool. The Sherlock Method, 7 Days to Better Deduction. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's so good to have you here. You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about the power of observation, the art of deduction, and that almost supernatural ability Sherlock Holmes seems to possess to see what everyone else misses. It's not just about solving crimes, it's about navigating life with a sharper mind, making better decisions, and understanding the world, and the people in it, on a deeper level. We've all marveled at how Holmes could tell a man's profession, his recent travels, or even his marital status just from a speck of mud on his boot or the wear on his cuffs. And while we might not be aspiring to catch master criminals from Baker Street, imagine applying just a fraction of that deductive prowess to your everyday life. Imagine seeing the subtle cues, connecting the dots, and truly understanding situations before others even register them. That's why, today, we're diving into something I've cooked up, inspired directly by the master detective himself, the Sherlock Method, 7 Days to Better Deduction. This isn't just theory, this is an action plan. A practical, week-long challenge designed to rewire your brain, sharpen your senses, and start thinking a little more like Sherlock Holmes. Are you ready to take the challenge? Grab a notebook, maybe a pen, and let's get started. Day 1 to 2. Practice active observation. Note 3 details about everyone you meet. Alright, let's kick things off with the absolute bedrock of Sherlock's genius, observation. But not just seeing things. It's about active observation. Most of us walk through life with our eyes open but our minds largely shut off to the deluge of information around us. We see shapes, colors, generalities. Sherlock perceives details. He trains his eyes to be more than just receptors, they're data collectors. Think about it. When you meet someone new, or even someone you see every day, what's the first thing you notice? Their face, their clothes, maybe their overall demeanor. But how often do you go deeper? How often do you consciously look for the tells? Your challenge for day 1 and 2 is this: for every single person you interact with, or even just observe from a distance, at the coffee shop, on the commute, at work, with friends, family, make a mental note of 3 distinct, specific details about them. Not nice shirt. That's too general. Think, is their watch strap worn on one side, suggesting a dominant hand or a nervous habit of fiddling? Are there faint pen marks on their index finger and thumb, implying they write a lot by hand? Do their shoes have a very specific type of mud or dust, hinting at where they might have walked this morning? What about the slight tension around their eyes, or a subtle tremor in their hands, even if they're smiling? Perhaps the way they hold their phone, a cracked screen protector, a well-loved case, or how they swipe with precision. It's about pushing beyond the superficial. In the beginning, this will feel incredibly awkward and slow. You'll catch yourself just seeing a person. But with practice, your brain will start to create new neural pathways. You'll begin to notice things you never would have before. It's like turning up the resolution on your internal camera. I remember when I first tried this, I was at a bookstore, and I saw a woman browsing the travel section. My initial thought was just woman looking at books. But then I forced myself. 3 details. I noticed the faded creases on her backpack, indicating it was well used, probably for actual travel. Her fingernails were short and clean, practical. And she kept unconsciously tapping her foot, a little restless, perhaps dreaming of her next adventure. None of these were groundbreaking, but they built a small, internal profile. It's not about judging, it's about observing and connecting. Don't worry about being right or wrong in your deductions at this stage. The goal is simply to see more, to gather more data points. These 2 days are about waking up your senses and training your brain to 1. Digital declutter. For a portion of these 2 days, try to consciously reduce your exposure to junk information. This might mean limiting social media scrolls to specific times, unsubscribing from newsletters you never read, or actively choosing news sources that are factual rather than sensational. 2. Mental inventory. Take time for quiet reflection. What thoughts consistently occupy your mind that serve no productive purpose? Are you replaying old arguments? Fretting over hypothetical scenarios? Practice acknowledging these thoughts, then consciously filing them away or discarding them. Imagine literally sweeping them out of your mental attic. 3. Prioritization. As new information comes in, ask yourself, is this essential? Does this serve a purpose for my goals, understanding, or well-being? If not, give it less attention. This isn't about becoming a robot, it's about making space. It's about recognizing that our attention is a precious resource. When your mind is less cluttered, you can recall facts more easily, make connections faster, and focus more intensely on the task at hand, which, coincidentally, makes your active observation even more powerful. When I started doing this, it felt like I was giving myself permission to ignore things. At first, there was a fear of missing out. But then, I noticed a palpable difference. I could focus on my writing for longer stretches. Conversations felt more present. And those small details I was observing from day one, they started to stick better because there was less noise vying for attention. It's a surprisingly liberating feeling, like opening a window in a dusty old room. Day 5 to 6, Emotional Detachment. Analyze a personal problem as if it were a stranger's. Now we're moving into a more advanced, and often more challenging, aspect of deduction, emotional detachment. Sherlock Holmes was a master of this. He rarely let personal feelings or biases cloud his judgment when it came to a case. He saw the facts, cold and hard, separate from the emotional turmoil they might cause. For us, in our daily lives, emotions are incredibly powerful and often cloud our ability to think clearly, especially when dealing with personal problems. We get caught up in how we feel about a situation, how it impacts us, or what we wish would happen, rather than seeing the objective reality. Your challenge for day 5 and 6 is this: choose a personal problem, a challenge you're currently facing, or a difficult decision you need to make. This could be anything from a disagreement with a friend, a career dilemma, or even just a persistent annoyance. Now, here's the crucial part: analyze it as if it were a problem belonging to a complete stranger. Imagine a friend came to you with this exact scenario, laying out all the facts. What advice would you give them? What are the objective pros and cons? What are the logical steps to take? Here's how to practice this. 1. Distance yourself. Mentally step outside the situation. Give the characters in your problem, including yourself, different names. Refer to Sarah and John instead of me and my friend. 2. Focus on facts. Write down only the undisputed facts of the situation. Strip away all your emotional interpretations, assumptions, and feelings. 3. Brainstorm solutions. Impartially, what are the logical solutions available? What are the potential outcomes of each, good and bad? Do this without considering how any of these solutions feel to you personally. 4. Identify biases. Where are your personal biases creeping in? Are you blaming someone unfairly? Are you afraid of a particular outcome? Acknowledge these, and try to set them aside. This exercise is incredibly difficult because our emotions are so intertwined with our experiences. But it's also incredibly powerful. By detaching, even for a brief period, you gain clarity. You might see solutions you were blind to before, or realize that your emotional reaction was disproportionate to the actual facts. I tried this recently with a frustrating project at work. I was feeling overwhelmed and angry, convinced it was unfair. When I mentally reframed it as my colleague, Alex, is having trouble with this task, suddenly the solutions became obvious. I could see the project's weak points, the communication gaps, and the logical steps Alex should take to mitigate them. When I then applied those same logical steps back to my situation, the emotional fog lifted, and I was able to tackle it much more effectively. This isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about understanding that while emotions are valid, they aren't always the best guides for logical problem solving. It's about giving yourself the mental space to make truly informed decisions. Day 7, the Watson check. Articulate your theories out loud to test their logic. We've observed, we've decluttered, we've detached. Now, it's time for the final, crucial step in our Sherlock method, the Watson check. Think about Dr. Watson. He was more than just a chronicler, he was Sherlock's sounding board. Holmes would often articulate his complex deductions to Watson, not necessarily to inform him, but to solidify his own thinking. When we formulate an idea, a deduction, or a theory in our minds, it can feel perfectly logical and complete. But the moment we try to explain it out loud, to another person, or even just an imaginary one, gaps, flaws, and illogical leaps often become glaringly obvious. Your challenge for day 7 is this: take one of your observations, deductions, or a conclusion you've drawn from the past week's exercises, and articulate it out loud. Here's how to do your Watson check. 1. Choose a case. Pick something you've been observing. Perhaps the details you gathered about someone on day 1 to 2, or a conclusion you reached during your emotional detachment exercise. 2. Find your Watson. This could be a real person, a trusted friend, partner, or family member who you can explain your thoughts to. Or, if you prefer, it can be an imaginary person, a mirror, or even just your pet. The key is the act of verbalizing. 3. Explain your logic, step by step. Don't just state your conclusion. Walk through how you got there. Based on A, and then B, which led me to C, my theory is D. Use clear, concise language. 4. Listen to yourself. As you speak, pay attention. Does it sound as convincing out loud as it did in your head? Are there places where you stumble, where your argument feels weak, or where you suddenly realize you've made an assumption you can't justify? 5. Seek feedback. Optional but recommended if you're talking to a real person. Encourage them to ask questions, even challenging ones. Their fresh perspective can reveal blind spots you missed. This process is invaluable. It forces you to structure your thoughts, to identify assumptions, and to communicate your reasoning clearly. It's the ultimate test of logical soundness. I do this all the time, particularly with new ideas for videos or complex problems I'm trying to unravel. Sometimes, I'll start explaining something to my wife, and halfway through, I'll stop myself and say, "Wait, that doesn't actually make sense," or I skipped a crucial step there. Just the act of externalizing my internal monologue helps me refine and strengthen my arguments. It's like stress testing your deduction. If it can hold up to being articulated, it's much more likely to be sound. Conclusion: beyond the 7 days. So, there you have it. The Sherlock Method, a 7-day action plan to begin sharpening your mind. This isn't about becoming Sherlock Holmes overnight, of course. It's about starting the journey. It's about building foundational habits that, with consistent practice, can profoundly change how you interact with the world. From active observation, noticing those 3 little details, to decluttering your mental attic, making space for what truly matters. From emotionally detaching to gain objective clarity, to finally doing the what's in check, articulating your thoughts to test their logical strength. Each step builds upon the last, transforming not just what you see, but how you think. This method isn't confined to a single week. Consider this your training wheels. Keep practicing these techniques. Make active observation a daily habit. Regularly clean out your mental attic. Approach your problems with a dose of emotional detachment. And always run your theories through a what's in check. I genuinely believe that embracing even a fraction of Sherlock Holmes's deductive reasoning can make our lives richer, our decisions clearer, and our understanding of the complex tapestry of human experience much deeper. What do you think? Are you ready to take on this challenge? Let me know in the comments below which day you're most excited, or most nervous, about trying. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content like this, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the fascinating world of books and ideas. Thank you so much for watching, for joining me on this journey into the mind of a master. Until next time, keep observing, keep deducing, and keep being curious. The Science of Deduction, Final Analysis. Hello, wonderful minds, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you've joined me once again as we delve deeper into the captivating world of literature and the timeless wisdom it holds. Over our past discussions, we've taken a thrilling journey through the fog-shrouded streets of Victorian London, navigated the labyrinthine corridors of human deception, and stood in awe of a mind so sharp, so incisive, that his very name has become a byword for brilliant detection: Sherlock Holmes. We've meticulously explored the plots, marveled at the intricacies, and perhaps even felt a little surge of our own inner detective awakening as we followed the clues alongside Dr. Watson. Today, as we reach the grand finale of our deep dive into Arthur Conan Doyle's foundational collection, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, it's time for our final analysis. This isn't just about a quick recap of the 10 or 12 stories we've encountered. No, this is about something far more profound. It's about distilling the very essence of Holmes's genius, extracting the core principles, the immutable laws of observation and logic that transcend the pages of fiction and offer us powerful tools for understanding the world around us. These are the lessons that make Holmes's methods not just entertaining, but genuinely instructive and enduringly relevant. So, prepare yourselves, perhaps with a comforting mug of coffee, or a strong tea if you prefer to channel your inner British detective, though please, let's avoid the chemical stimulants Holmes himself was prone to. As we dissect the science of deduction, we're going to focus on 3 transformative insights that, I believe, are the bedrock of Holmesian thought and offer invaluable perspectives for problem solving, critical thinking, and even navigating our personal and professional lives. Each of these points is a lens through which we can better perceive reality, a framework for intellectual honesty, and a testament to the power of focused, methodical inquiry. Insight 1. The seemingly trivial is often the most important. The dog that didn't bark. This first insight, for me, is the true hallmark of Sherlock Holmes's unparalleled genius. It's the idea that what isn't immediately apparent, what doesn't scream for attention, or what appears utterly mundane, can often be the most crucial piece of the puzzle. It's about cultivating a sixth sense for the subtle, an acute awareness of the overlooked, and a profound respect for the power of absence. It teaches us to look beyond the spectacular and to find meaning in the quiet whispers of reality. Our human brains are, by design, wired to notice the disruptions. We're programmed for pattern recognition and anomaly detection. A sudden explosion, a car crash, a brightly colored object against a dull background, these things instantly capture our attention. And rightly so, for survival. But Holmes flips this on its head. He trains himself, and by extension, us, to pay equal, if not more, attention to the lack of disruption, to the things that should be there but aren't, or to details so commonplace that they simply fade into the background. He understands that the most cunning criminals, and indeed, the most elusive truths, often hide in plain sight, camouflaged by their very ordinariness. While the most famous articulation of this principle comes from Silver Blaze, a later story where Holmes notes the curious incident of the dog in the night time, because the watchdog did nothing when a stranger approached, implying the intruder was known. This foundational approach permeates the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes as well. It's the very spirit of his observation. Consider a case of identity. The story revolves around a mysterious fiancé, Hosmer Angel, who vanishes on the morning of his wedding. Everyone is focused on the man who disappeared. Where did he go? Who was he? But Holmes, with his characteristic patience for the details, zeroes in on what is missing: the lack of a proper courtship, the identical typewriter used for letters from both T. How many times in our own lives do we settle for a partial explanation, or cling to a narrative because it's convenient, or because it fits our own biases, even when confronted with contradictory evidence? Holmes's method forces intellectual honesty. It demands that we confront reality, however strange, however uncomfortable, however contrary to our initial expectations. I actively try to apply this in my own work, whether I'm trying to understand a complex historical event, decipher a confusing trend in public discourse, or even just figure out why a particular piece of software isn't behaving as expected. I list all the possible factors, all the potential causes. Then, with as much detachment as I can muster, I ask myself, is this truly consistent with all the facts I have? Does it leave any unexplained gaps? Does it contradict any verifiable data point? I'm ruthless in discarding explanations that don't fit, even if they're my preferred explanation, even if they seem obvious at first glance. It's tough, it requires humility, and it demands constant vigilance against confirmation bias, but it almost invariably leads to a clearer, more accurate, and ultimately more truthful understanding of the situation. It's a mental decluttering, removing the debris of falsehoods until the clean, stark truth shines through. This insight teaches us to embrace the unexpected, to not shy away from solutions that initially seem outlandish or unbelievable. If you've methodically and thoroughly eliminated everything else, then that strange, improbable thing staring you in the face is the answer. It's a call to intellectual courage, to follow the evidence wherever it leads, no matter how uncomfortable, how unconventional, or how initially incredible the destination. And that, in an age saturated with misinformation, echo chambers, and appeals to emotion over logic, is a lesson more vital than ever for anyone seeking genuine understanding. Insight 3. Genius requires a grounding force, the vital role of Watson. For our third and final insight, we shift our focus from the purely intellectual mechanics of deduction to the human element, the vital, often understated, and utterly indispensable dynamic that elevates Sherlock Holmes from merely a brilliant mind to a truly captivating and enduring literary icon, the crucial role of Dr. John H. Watson. It's tempting, at first glance, to pigeonhole Watson as merely a sidekick, a convenient narrator, a less intelligent foil whose primary purpose is to highlight Holmes's own brilliance. And while he does serve all those functions, such a simplistic view drastically underestimates his profound and essential contribution. Dr. Watson is, in truth, the grounding force, the emotional compass, and the vital lens through which we, the readers, are able to truly experience, comprehend, and connect with Holmes's extraordinary, often bewildering, genius. Without Watson, Sherlock Holmes would be a fascinating, perhaps even awe-inspiring, but ultimately distant, abstract, and perhaps even sterile automaton of pure logic. Consider Holmes in isolation. He is a man of extremes, brilliant beyond measure, intensely focused, mercurial in temperament, and often strikingly oblivious to social conventions or the common courtesies of polite society. He is driven by a restless intellect that borders on a manic obsession with intellectual puzzles. Emotions, personal connections, the ordinary concerns of humanity, these often seem secondary, if not entirely irrelevant, to his singular pursuit of truth. He uses cocaine when suffering from boredom between cases, he neglects his health, and he can be cuttingly dismissive, even disdainful, of those he deems intellectually inferior. He is undoubtedly a compelling figure, an intellectual titan, but one whose sheer otherworldliness would make him incredibly difficult for an ordinary reader to truly connect with, to empathize with, or even to fully grasp without a sympathetic intermediary. Enter Dr. Watson. A veteran of the Afghan War, a medical doctor, a man of integrity, competency. To the emotional and moral compass, Watson provides the essential humanity that Holmes often, though not always, consciously suppresses. He cares deeply about the victims, he empathizes with their plight, and he brings a crucial moral dimension to the relentless pursuit of justice. Holmes pursues truth for truth's sake, often viewing crimes as fascinating intellectual puzzles. Watson reminds us that these puzzles involve real people, real suffering, and that the pursuit of justice has profound human costs and, ultimately, human benefits. He grounds the abstract intellectual pursuit in the messy, often painful, reality of human experience. He is the heart to Holmes's brain. 3. The invaluable sounding board. Holmes frequently articulates his developing theories and observations to Watson, not necessarily because he expects Watson to solve the case, though Watson does offer surprisingly astute observations sometimes, but often because the very act of explaining forces Holmes to clarify and organize his own thoughts. Watson's questions, even his occasional misunderstandings or doubts, compel Holmes to articulate his reasoning more fully, to test his nascent ideas against a less specialized, more conventional mind. This dialectical process sharpens Holmes's own arguments and allows us, the readers, to be privy to the development of his brilliant deductions, almost as if we are sitting in that armchair with him at Baker Street. He's not just a listener, he's an active, albeit often unwitting, participant in the deductive process. For the reliable observer and witness, Watson is there to witness the truly extraordinary, to attest firsthand to Holmes's unique and often superhuman abilities. His consistent amazement and unwavering admiration for Holmes, even after years of shared adventures, reinforces for the reader the truly exceptional nature of the detective's mind. If Watson, a pragmatic, intelligent, and medically trained man, is consistently astounded and impressed, then we, the readers, have every reason to be as well. His credibility lends credence to Holmes's seemingly impossible feats. 5. A man of action and empathy, Watson is not merely a passive observer. In The Man with the Twisted Lip, his personal investigation into the opium dens of London, his courage in following a lead while Holmes is elsewhere, showcases his dedication and bravery. In The Red-Headed League, his keen observation of the pavement outside Jabez Wilson's shop, though initially dismissed by Holmes, later proves to be a crucial data point Holmes already knew but appreciated Watson confirming. Watson's medical background also often provides key insights or verifies physical details that Holmes, while brilliant, might not have the specific training to interpret. For me, this insight speaks to a universal truth that extends far beyond detective fiction. Even the most exceptional, most brilliant individuals benefit immeasurably from collaboration, from a complementary perspective, from a genuine human connection. No matter how dazzlingly brilliant, no one operates effectively or sustainably in a true vacuum. Watson provides Holmes with a vital mirror, a steady counterpoint, and a crucial link to the common world that Holmes so often disdains, but ultimately exists to serve. He provides the emotional ballast that keeps Holmes grounded, preventing his intellect from becoming completely detached or destructive. In my own work, whether it's brainstorming ideas for a new video series, wrestling with a particularly tricky script, or just navigating the complexities of running a YouTube channel, I've found my Watsons, those trusted friends, supportive colleagues, a particularly insightful comment from a viewer, or even just my own reflection on audience feedback, to be absolutely invaluable. They challenge my assumptions, point out my blind spots, and offer perspectives I might never have considered on my own. They provide that essential grounding force, that collaborative friction, that transforms a raw, isolated idea into something polished, relatable, and truly impactful. So, while Sherlock Holmes undeniably remains the dazzling star, the intellectual supernova, let's never, ever forget the quiet, steady, and utterly indispensable constellation that is Dr. John H. Watson. He doesn't just narrate the adventures, he makes them meaningful. He reminds us that true genius isn't just about raw intellect or solitary brilliance, but also about the profound connections, the synergistic interactions, and the shared human experience that give that intellect its ultimate purpose, its greatest resonance, and its lasting legacy. And there we have it, my friends, our final analysis of Arthur Conan Doyle's The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes through the illuminating lens of these three profound insights. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've delved into how the seemingly trivial holds the key to the greatest mysteries, urging us to look beyond the immediate, to listen for the dog that didn't bark, and to cultivate an active, almost meditative, awareness of absence as much as presence. This is a powerful call to deeper observation, to a more nuanced, less biased engagement with the intricate world around us. We've harnessed the unwavering power of eliminating the impossible, understanding that systematic, rigorous logic, applied with ruthless precision, can strip away layers of deception and confusion until even the most improbable, yet undeniable, truth shines forth. It's a profound demand for intellectual honesty, for the courage to follow evidence wherever it leads, regardless of our preconceptions or comforts. And finally, we've celebrated the vital role of the grounding force, the indispensable, symbiotic partnership of Dr. Watson to Sherlock Holmes. This reminds us that even the most singular genius benefits immeasurably from human connection, from empathy, and from a dedicated chronicler who can make the extraordinary relatable and give it a heart. It's a timeless testament to the power of complementary relationships and the enduring value of shared human perspective. These aren't just quaint lessons from a collection of Century OL. Join the irregulars. And so, as the final piece of the puzzle clicks into place, and the last, brilliant deduction illuminates the shadows, we reach the end of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, at least for now. What a journey it's been, hasn't it? 12 cases, each a labyrinth of human folly, cunning, and sometimes, profound tragedy. I always find myself marveling at Conan Doyle's ability to craft such intricate narratives, and then, of course, at Holmes's unparalleled intellect in unraveling them with such precision and flair. But you know, as much as I adore watching Holmes work his magic, there's always a part of me, and I suspect, a part of many of you, that tries to get there first. That little spark of competitive spirit, that urge to spot the telling detail, to connect the seemingly disparate clues before the great detective himself lays them out. It's a delightful, often humbling, but always engaging challenge. It's what makes reading these stories feel like an active pursuit, rather than just passive consumption. We're not just spectators, we're junior partners, aspiring sleuths in the grand game. Transition to the first call to action, maintaining the engaging, personal tone, and that brings us to my first question for you, my fellow armchair sleuths, my burgeoning Baker Street irregulars. After journeying through these 12 remarkable cases, from the curious conundrum of the Red-Headed League to the chilling revelations of the Speckled Band, and all the intricate puzzles in between, tell me, in the comments below, which of these 12 cases did you manage to solve before Holmes unveiled his solution? Be honest now. Was there a moment where you saw the trick, or recognized the culprit, or understood the motive before he dramatically announced it? I'd absolutely love to hear your triumphs, and perhaps, your near misses. For me, the 5 orange pips always gets me. I think I have it. I'm absolutely convinced I've got the full picture, and then, poof, Holmes reveals something utterly obvious that I completely overlooked, a piece of information I dismissed or simply didn't connect. It's a humbling experience, I confess, but one that makes me appreciate his genius even more. Let's make the comments section a gallery of our collective deductive prowess, a place where we can celebrate our little victories against the master, or commiserate over the clues we missed. Your insights make this community richer, truly. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, this immersive journey into the gaslit streets of Victorian London, listening to these adaptations unfold, then I truly hope you'll consider becoming a more permanent member of our growing community here. This channel, you see, is a labor of love, a passion project born from a desire to bring classic literature to life through the power of sound and storytelling. We strive to craft experiences that aim to transport you right into the heart of these timeless tales, making them not just heard, but felt. We meticulously research, adapt, and narrate to ensure every word resonates, every atmosphere is palpable. So, if you're keen for more such adventures, for more literary journeys that awaken the imagination and stimulate the mind, whether we're unraveling another mystery, exploring epic fantasies, delving into profound philosophical works, or even revisiting beloved fairy tales with a fresh perspective, please take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. That way, you won't miss a single chapter of our future explorations, and you'll be among the first to join us on whatever exciting narrative path we embark upon next. Your subscription doesn't just help us grow, it enables us to continue creating these immersive worlds for you, and for that, I am profoundly grateful. And finally, for those of you who have a friend, a family member, or perhaps even a worthy rival in intellect, someone you know who prides themselves on their keen observational skills, who loves a good puzzle, or who simply needs to flex those mental muscles. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. If you found value, meaning, or inspiration in this journey, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter. Your support helps us bring more timeless classics to life. See you in the next reading.